Homeschool is amazing for lots of reasons for your kids, but homeschooling can be a huge help to the marriage because it forces you to have these meetings, forces you to have these talks that really makes you face symptoms long before they become bigger problems.
Welcome to CHEA's California Homeschool Podcast. I'm Angela Lasch, Executive Director of the Christian Home Educators Association of California, where we're committed to supporting homeschooling families across our state. The homeschooling landscape has transformed dramatically since I began homeschooling almost 25 years ago. Today's dads are teaching algebra, leading field trips, and they're engaging with their children in ways they never have before. Yet many Christian fathers still wonder, what exactly is my role in homeschooling? Dr. Renton Rathbun was a featured speaker at CHEA's recent Parenting and Homeschool Convention, where he connected powerfully with families. With over 25 years' experience in higher education, a PhD in apologetics, and real-world homeschooling experience, he brings both scholarly insight and practical wisdom to these crucial questions. How can dads lead without undermining? How do working fathers stay meaningfully connected? And what does biblical headship look like in homeschooling? So whether you're a dad seeking guidance, a mom wanting to support your husband's involvement, or a single mom faithfully navigating this journey, this conversation offers biblical wisdom and practical insights for strengthening your family's homeschool journey together. So let's get started. All right. Well, Renton, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It has just been a joy getting to know you through these Zoom calls and the last couple minutes. And the couple minutes I got to meet you at convention last May. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your wisdom with hopefully lots of dads that are listening, but also for entire homeschool families.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited about this.
Yes, it's going to be fun. I already know it's going to be fun. So, All right. Well, let's get started so people can get to know you a little bit, especially for people who weren't at the convention. But you have quite the biography, all the things listed under your name. So, but we're just going to sum that up. Because you have taught in both secular and Christian higher education, correct? Over 25 years. But now you're homeschooling. So yes. How did that all come to be? What drew you and your wife to homeschooling, despite all that classroom experience you have?
Yeah. So, a lot of people, when I have these conversations with people, they say, well, we had our kid in a public school and we just, they tell us the horrors of public school and they pulled them out and started homeschooling. Our story is a little different. Our story starts with, we homeschooled out of necessity. Our oldest, he's 24. He is now married, and I'm not ready to call myself a grandfather, but my daughter-in-law is pregnant.
Yay! Welcome to the club.
Yes.
The grandparent club.
So this is who I am now. But when we had Daniel, we didn't have enough money to send him to a Christian school because they're insanely expensive. And we just weren't going to do public school, so we just did homeschool. And that came with its own difficulties when you do it out of necessity as opposed to principle. But then we had our two littles. So I have a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old. A little boy is our youngest, and then we have a little girl, Jude and Olivia. And so we were busy and. We didn't, last time we homeschooled, it was out of necessity. Now we didn't need to. We were in a different place in our life. We put him in Christian school. And after 2 years in Christian school, we said, we need to get our kids out of there. And I know not every, there's different kinds of Christian schools. Some are good, some are not great or whatever. But there was just a lot of things that we were uncomfortable with. We were uncomfortable with the way they do, any school does recess, where the the teachers are standing way far off, and then your kids are playing together. Who knows what they're talking about, because the stuff that our kids came home telling us what they were talking about scared us to death. Christian schools, a lot of times at their best, want at least one parent to be a Christian, which is great. But if the other parent is a lesbian living with her new wife, and now I have my kid coming home saying, well, Johnny told me he has two mommies, and I'm like, you're only in kindergarten. We got to have this conversation now. And so it's just so many things. We have special needs kids. And when you have 30 kids in that classroom, I don't care how Christian it is, you got one person that's trying to help all these kids. And my kids are the ones that go and, slip through the cracks because they're special needs. It's a lot of work. If you don't think they're cute enough, you're not going to do a lot. So we just thought, we need to. So then homeschooling became a principle for us instead of a necessity.
You brought up some really good points, especially about the private Christian schools, because I know when I began homeschooling, we had one at our church. And so people just assumed that's where we would go. And we did with my oldest for a couple of years, but then I really felt the call to homeschool. And automatically it was like, oh, is it because you can't afford it? That's why you have to homeschool? Well, no, we couldn't afford it, but that had nothing to do with it.
That's right.
That's our calling. That was our calling. All right. Well, since you have this background in education, but I totally get why you began homeschooling. Has anything changed as far as your perspective on education? The special needs aspect and wanting to give your kid that one-on-one that they can't get in the classroom, absolutely. But just education overall, has your perspective changed?
I'm glad you asked this question. I've never had this question before. And, I have to search my heart a little bit, because I really do think my perspective has changed on education. So I taught college for many years, and my default was lecture. And it's college; it's kind of what you kind of expect. But I was surprised what some of the consequences of my lecture ended up being, that I discovered when my wife and I really got into homeschooling by principle. So what I found was, I started to believe that my students were really doing critical thinking work because they were regurgitating what I said. And so when they regurgitated what I said, it sounded amazing because I love what I say. And so I thought, wow, these kids are brilliant. They sound like me. And so what I found out what I was doing was, I was doing all the critical thinking work and building it up into my lectures and then into my testing and all that sort of stuff. And so what they were left with was, how do I reconstruct Dr. Rathbun's points of view? And if I reconstruct them the way he wants us to, I'll get an A. And they would. And for decades, this happened. When I had my own kids, and we were doing real work in our homeschooling, I really started to become aware of the fact of how easy it is to do the thinking for them and then have them regurgitate the thinking. It changed the way I even think about how I discipline, how I teach at home. That's just in general how I talk to my kids. Because I found I need to start asking them questions, because what I see is sometimes they don't even know how to ask a question. And so I have to lead them along with how they ask questions, and then I have to kind of help them along with their thinking. I have to be patient. I have to think about, okay, well, these kids are developing an answer. I want them to develop my answer. And so I've had to really do some real work. I mean, really conscious work about how I get them to answer what's in their head first so that we have something to work with instead of giving them something and then moving from there. We just did a podcast on critical thinking for my show a little while ago, and it just reminded me again, I am terrible at this. And I've been a teacher for over 25 years. I have ruined thousands of kids. But they'll be fine.
They'll be fine. And that is how we all learned. And I mean, even with homeschooling, yeah, you have to be careful, especially if you get that box curriculum and it's so nice and all the tests are multiple choice. And you're like, oh, look, they got 100%. They must have really learned everything I just taught them. And then you pat yourself on the back saying, this is fantastic. But it's so much more than that. It's so much more than that.
Yeah, it's teaching them how to interpret the world around them using the story you have taught them to live in. Because this is the thing, whether you're a 6-year-old or you're a 66-year-old, you're interpreting the world through the story that you believe you live in. But if you can't articulate the story, that your story begins with, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And in the middle of it somewhere, there's a fall, there's redemption, and all those sort of things. There's, you have a God that sent his son for you, that whole story, all those things, so that even when you're looking around, from your story, everything I see has purpose. And so then part of my life of thinking is interpreting the purpose, which takes a lot of intentionality. And if your kids can't articulate the story they're living in, they have nothing to interpret the world with.
I love that. You're really just filtering everything through the Bible, what God says, why we're here, and our purpose through that. That's amazing. Amazing. All right. Well, we have you on the show today because we really want to talk to the dads. So let's switch gears a little bit and let's start talking to the dads. All right. Now, when we had talked the other day, I had mentioned I've noticed a huge change in homeschooling, at least in my area, when it comes to dads. When I first started homeschooling, there was no dads at the support group meetings or at park days or field trips. I mean, you might have heard about them teaching a subject here and there, but it was very predominantly the moms kind of running the show. And then now that I'm not homeschooling, but still helping in the homeschool arena, I guess, I just can't believe all the dads that show up to meetings now. Like, I don't even know how to talk to them or relate to them because all the dads staring back at me is not something I've ever encountered in all my years in helping to homeschool. So what do you think are the biggest challenges facing dads now in the homeschool community when it comes to engaging in their children's education?
You could replace the word education with almost any word. See, when the pendulum swings, there's good and there's bad. So the pendulum, from Generation X, the pendulum was, your dad loves you because he goes to work. You have a roof over your head. That's how you know he loves you. You may never see this guy, but he is at work doing his job so that you can have food, and you're supposed to be grateful for that. And you should be. But my generation became father hungry, and we desired to have our father around us. We needed our dad. And so the pendulum has swung back. Now we have dads that are like, okay, I need to be with my children. I need to be at home. And, COVID helped out a lot with that, strangely, because, many companies now are okay with a few days that you stay at home and do, work remotely or whatever. But now that the pendulum has swung back, the guys are saying, I need to spend time. But here's the problem. The biggest problem is guys don't know what to do. They know they need to be there, but they don't have a script, because the script that they were hoping for never happened. Maybe their father just wasn't around very much. Maybe divorce has skyrocketed since Generation X. And so it's possible a lot of guys grew up with their moms. And so they don't know what to do. They know they need to be there, but they don't know what to do. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now for guys is that they know they need to be there, and so they insert themselves into the homeschooling process. They know they need to be there, so they say, okay, I need to have time, and so maybe I'll go to park day or whatever it is, and I will be around. My kid is not going to grow up saying I never knew my dad. But if you don't know how to use that time, if you don't have that script set, you could become this. You could become in the way to your wife. You can get in the way. Your kid will be like, "Hey, it's great you're here," and you're like, "I'm glad to be here," and it becomes awkward and strange, and now you're just a lump. And so they're going to grow up going, "Yeah, my dad was around a lot, but I just didn't know why he was there." And so that's, I think, that one of the biggest issues that the guys are going to be facing.
So then what do you think the role is then? Because I know even for us when we homeschooled, because of my husband's schedule, he was gone a lot. But because we homeschooled, whenever he was home, whether it was 12 o'clock on a Wednesday or, he got home really late, my kids were there. So that really helped because they had that connection. But he was the provider, which enabled me to be able to homeschool. So we would joke that he was the principal. He was the principal of the school. He would check in on things. But, I was the teacher, made the curriculum decisions, did all the teaching. And that was great. It worked for us. But now, like you said, these dads are around. But what is their role?
I've thought about this with my wife and I because, I travel a lot. I speak a lot in different places. And so I'm traveling, I come back. And, something that some people don't know, that if you're a traveler and you have to and you go away, you come back, you go away, you come back, the house is going to learn how to function without you. And so when you come back, you could really get in the way fast because they already have a way of doing things. And now dad's here. And now dad's going to insert himself back into the world. And sometimes that happens with guys that go to work. Maybe they don't travel, but they go to work. There's a system, and then he comes home. Who is this guy? And so I've been thinking about this, and this is what I think is the answer. I think that men, when it comes to the homeschool unit, men are the president, and the wife is the CEO. So a president does not have the time and it's not expected of the president to make sure all the details are running. The president is the one that kind of sets the vision for the institution. He sets that vision, and then he is a curator. He makes sure that the vision is continuing, and he inserts himself in particular ways that don't get in the way of the CEO, but in particular ways to ensure that everyone in the institution is moving the same direction. The CEO actually has more work to do because what the CEO has to do is make a ton of decisions that make sure that vision is pushed forward. And the CEO has to communicate and cooperate and actually believe in the president. That the president does know what he's doing. His vision is a good vision. And that's why I'm doing all this work to move forward with that vision. And so I think there has to be that dynamic between the father and the mother in this situation so that they know where their jobs are. And this is the thing, I think the biggest problem is that guys don't have a vision for their family, let alone for what homeschooling is supposed to be. And that vision is not supposed to be the Lone Ranger's vision that he just has in his own mind and then comes to his wife and say, "Wife, this is the vision. You shall obey." It's insane. There's no way that the CEO is going to like that. And so it has to be a vision that the CEO and the president have agreed upon and said, this is what we want for our family. This is the best way to go. And so now the president has a way forward. So he can say, okay, this is So as we work together to decide what, the curriculum is going to be, and as we work together to decide on certain things, you can then go down and feel confident about what you're doing. You can even know where your limitations might be, where I need the president to step in. And I think that's what's lacking with a lot of men. They don't know what the vision is, and they may not even know what I'm talking about when I say you have to have a vision for your family and what homeschooling is to be for your family.
Can you give me an example? Sorry, that wasn't one of the questions, was it?
No.
Well, how about we kind of tie it into the next question? Because looking at this from a biblical view, the biblical head of the home would be the father. So how would you tie that into homeschooling?
So homeschooling is a piece of the family. It's not all of it. It's a piece. And so when a man has a vision for his family where he says, okay, this is our vision, we need to be a unit that raises children or rears children, if I want to be grammatically correct as an English major, rear children that end up believing that the Bible is the ultimate authority in their life and that their hearts have to be dedicated to the Lord. Well, if that's your mission as a family, well, then I need to have that in me, and my wife needs to have that in her. But then we need to say, okay, well, that's part of our homeschooling. How is our homeschooling going to demonstrate that the Bible is the ultimate authority and that their hearts have to be driven towards the Lord? That's going to change what kind of curriculum I have. Saxon math might be really neat, but if I'm thinking, well, I want my kids to think that the Bible is authority, maybe we need to look at some curriculum that talks about the Bible in their math books. So there has to be, it changes how you think. So let me give you this example. When I first started teaching, I was a theater teacher, which I know is hard to believe because I'm so introverted and calm. But it's serious. And so the first thing they teach you when you're putting on a play is that you have to have an agenda. You have to have something you want the play to say. Because if you don't, then all your decisions are arbitrary. And so I was doing Romeo and Juliet. And so what I wanted to show is that Romeo and Juliet are not in love, and that I wanted to show that this is all about people being selfish in the name of love. So that was my vision for that play. So what I did was, so that changed every decision I made about that play. I wanted it to be in the 60s, where people most misunderstood love. And so everyone had bell bottoms. So that changed what everyone was wearing. That changed, what the weapons might look like and all that sort of stuff. It changed, things that I left out, things I put in, because I wanted people to get the feel of the 60s of how everyone was so convinced they knew what love was, but it actually led to disaster. In the same way, when you have that vision for your family, how do I raise a family that has Scripture as their ultimate authority in their brain and Christ as their ultimate authority in their hearts? How do I do that? Once I have that in my head, I think, okay, well then in my curriculum, that's going to change my decisions. It's going to make me think differently about the decisions my wife and I come to about how we even teach our kids, especially if they're delayed or have issues like our kids have. So having that vision, I think, is absolutely crucial because it changes everything else.
So then what would you say to the couple who maybe can't agree on that?
I would say this: before you start developing all the work it takes to do homeschooling, you both need to get on the same page. And that might mean, and I don't want to be dramatic, but it might mean counseling. It might mean using the authorities in your church and asking for help. I'm an elder at my church. It is glorious when a couple comes to us and says, I know that we need help. I know that we're at an impasse and we need someone to talk to us. I mean, that's wonderful. Long before you feel like you're an impasse in your marriage. I mean, right now you just said an impasse of trying to decide on something because there are issues going on. But being of one mind as a couple is essential if you're going to homeschool, because your kids, sometimes your kids act kind of like they don't know what's going on, but they absolutely do know what's going on. And if you guys are at an impasse and you soldier on with your homeschooling, it's going to be divided. It's going to be random. The kids are going to feel like there's no peace. It's going to be a disaster.
Can a father support their wives while they're homeschooling, especially if the dad is gone all day, that the dad is working full time? How can he help his wife practically?
Well, let me tell you what a guy's going to think is going to be helpful. He's going to think, all right, I need to help. I feel like I haven't done anything, and I just listened to this amazing podcast through CHEA, and so I need to get involved. And so this is how guys think. They think, when I go home today, I'm going to take over English. I'm going to take over English. I majored in English, and so I'm just going to take it over. So he gets home and he says, honey, give me the English book. I'm going to do it. And she's like, we had a thing going. You don't know what's going on. No, I'm going to help. And so what they do is they completely make this total disaster. The kids are like, what's going on? I thought we had something else going on, and now dad's taken over English. And so that's the worst thing you can do. And a lot of men I know are going to think that's going to help my wife so much. I'm going to be such a blessing to her by just grabbing the reins and moving. So the best thing a guy can do to support his wife, and guys, you have to listen carefully to what I'm about to say, because this is the key. You go to your wife and you say, honey, how can I help? And I know the women listening to this are going to think, okay, he's just being funny. No, you don't understand. Men do not understand that that's what they need to do. They think, I need to guess what's going on in my wife's mind and then move forward. Now, to be fair, a lot of times guys have been in fights with their wives because they did not guess what was in their mind and did not act on it. So, give us a break. But guys, you've got to ask them. You got to say, what would be a way I can help? What's a subject area that you dread? And maybe that's something I can take over. Or maybe I can't take over anything because there's not enough time, but there's something else I can do that can be a help. Tell me. The president has to talk to his CEO. The president has big picture ideas and big picture thoughts about how they're going to, reach their goals for their vision. But the CEO is on the ground. The CEO is making decisions in the everyday lives. And so that communication is vital. And so he has to ask, how can he help? And he has to be ready for a long conversation, because for some women, they've been doing this alone for so long. There's like, I don't need any help. Just, it's easier if I just do it all. And in that case, what you have is a guy that hasn't done anything for so long, they really don't know how he can help. And in that case, you need a longer conversation about how it is that you are maybe failing to be a help to your wife in many other ways, so that this is really just a symptom of what's going on in the home anyway. And that's what makes homeschooling so amazing. Homeschooling is amazing for lots of reasons for your kids, but homeschooling can be a huge help to the marriage. I know some people think this is going to ruin our marriage if we have all these talks. But that is exactly why homeschooling can actually be a big help to your marriage, because it forces you to have these meetings, forces you to have these talks that really makes you face symptoms long before they become bigger problems.
That was great. Just that simple question. How can I help?
Yeah.
So simple, but so much wisdom behind that. So let's hope that that's what if a dad is going to take away something from that today, or from this today, that will be it. Right. Now, thinking of homeschooling, as far as groups go, I'm assuming it might be the same in your area. There's a lot of different homeschool groups that get together, co-ops and support groups. They go on field trips together, things like that. But for the most part, they're still predominantly led by women, by the moms. The moms are getting all of this together. But now they've got these dads coming along, and it can be fantastic. And honestly, sometimes it can be a little awkward. We actually even got a question about this at our leadership event in May, where, you have all the moms at the park and then you've got the dad that shows up. So how can these groups welcome the dads and hopefully overcome some of that awkwardness?
Well, first, let me say, oh boy. First, let me say, I think it's okay to be a little hesitant, because if you don't know who this guy is, you have no idea what's going on with this guy, and so I would not just immediately say, welcome this man that you don't know who he is, and just because he homeschools, he must be a good guy. You just don't know. I've been an elder long enough to know that there are sins people can have and hide them really well behind a well-behaved family, if I can put it that way. So have your radar out, but the best thing you can do is communicate, but communicate together. So in other words, I would, if you are running something and you're at a park event and there's a guy with his kid and his kid's interacting with the other kids and the guys there, don't approach him alone. Take one of your girlfriends with you, or a few of you, go up to him and be really sweet and say, hi, I don't think we know who you are. Could you tell us your name? Do we know your wife? Are there other things that, make him feel welcome, but make him feel welcome, with other people with you. And then see if you can make contact with the wife. The more conversation you have, I think the better it is. We live in a fallen world, and he probably is a great guy that just wants to bring his kid to the park. But be wise. And so get to know him, make him feel welcome until you have reason not to. But do it with people around. Always have people around. I think that's very important. And guys, if you're the guy that shows up at the park, know that it is going to be weird because people are not used to that. So don't be weird. You be the guy that goes up and introduces yourself. Don't be a weirdo sitting on a rock or staring at your phone. Go up to them and talk to them. Know that they're the ladies. So you should be the man and go up and say, hi, my name is Frank, and this is my kid over there. My wife's name is whatever, and this is why we're here, and we're glad to see other kids. What's your kid's name? And just be normal. Just be normal. And I think that would be a big help to everybody.
All right. So let's say there's more than one dad. So now we've got a couple dads. So it's not quite so awkward. How can the dads just get involved more in the group and, without trying to take it over? Because again, most of these groups are run by the women. So, we're not talking about the family here. The group's already established. So how can either the women get the men involved, or the men, what can they offer to do for the group?
Yes, well, first of all, I think it's really important that the minute there's more than one man around, the guys do need to come together. This is the biggest problem with men today, is that they're trying to be men alone. And we need each other. We need friends. We need other men who are mentors to us. So, if you're running a group and, more than one guy shows up, or there's several guys that show up, encourage that. Tell them to be together. But I would also say, but don't let them forget that this is an organized thing that's going on that has a bunch of boundaries to it that they need to know. And with guys, they need to So this is another lesson we need to learn. Guys are usually wired as being spoken to directly. It will sound rude to you as a woman speaking to them, but to them, it's the only way they're going to understand what you're saying. So if you try to be passive aggressive and try and help them understand, okay, well, we're going to leave in a little bit, so it'd just be really neat if maybe you would take your kids with us so that we all went. He's going to think, if you say it that way, he's going to think, oh, I have a choice. I don't think I'm just going to stay here with my kid. You guys go do your thing. And that's bad. What you need to be is very direct, saying, we're so glad you're here. That's awesome. So this is how it goes. We're here for a little while. Then we're going to go down here and all the kids are going to look at this. And it'd be really great if you could help by just making sure the kids, don't fall behind. If you could just stay in the back and tell them exactly what you need them to do, tell them exactly what's going to happen, and then thank them for helping even before they help. And then they know. Then they got it. Okay, got it. Okay, that's how I can be a help. If he's a guy that is so weird that he has to be in charge of everything wherever he goes, just help him know that that's not what's going to happen here. And if he doesn't like that, then this probably isn't for him. But you got to be direct, and it's going to be uncomfortable for you. To the guy, he's going to think it's normal talk.
All right, very practical. And yeah, I'm sure that is going to help somebody out there listening who is already dreading the park days and field trips coming up in the fall. So thank you for that. All right, let's switch back just for a minute more to the home. How can fathers use their strength and interest to enhance their children's education?
Well, men are going to be more active. So there are things that they're going to be more sitting at a table type things. And if you need your husband to do that, he will probably do that for you. But if there are physical things, activities, men are good at activities. We understand activities. And so it takes away the awkwardness of the intimacy of sitting at a table. And I know some of the things I'm saying might sound strange, but if a guy's listening, it doesn't sound strange. And I think part of this whole thing, this whole issue we have with men are getting more involved in homeschooling, how should we respond? The best way is to understand how men think, and men need to understand how women think. Because even though men have been married for years upon years, they are still shocked when their wife still thinks in a certain way because she's a woman. And she's still shocked that he doesn't get it when she has hinted for weeks about something and he hasn't gotten the hint. Because we have to know each other and be willing to communicate that way. And so when guys work better with activities, that's a helpful way to know how to say, okay, I know that our kids need to do this activity. It's part of the homework or whatever it is. Even if it's an activity where you were watching something and talking about it, it's something you're doing. When it comes to just sitting down and saying, okay, help them through their math. And a guy can do that. That's probably not his strength. But when it comes to homework, per se of, because most curriculum has activity stuff because, best practices, whatever that means, is that we got to have an activity. Otherwise kids won't learn a thing. And, they might be done by lunch and we can't allow that. So, you can save your activities up for when he comes home and say, just circle them in red and say, these are the things I need you to do with the kids. And you can have it done before supper.
Not before lunch, before dinner. Okay, that works too.
Yeah, you hold food over his head. He'll do anything.
So what encouragement would you give to the dads who just feel inadequate or unprepared to even help at all in that homeschool world?
This is how I would encourage men who feel inadequate for homeschool work. You're definitely inadequate. And you probably have no idea what you're doing because you haven't gotten involved from the start. And so you have to now insert yourself into it. And so what you need is a really good CEO. You need to help her know, what is our vision? I don't know if we've had a vision. Maybe you do have a vision. And so you need to have a long conversation. And again, this is what's so great about homeschooling. Your relationship to your wife is going to be constantly tested through this work of homeschooling. And you don't have, guys, you are not enough to do this. You need Christ in your life. You need the Lord to depend upon, because what you're being asked to do in a fallen world, you can't do it. But you can with Christ. You can, when you turn to the Lord, beg for help. And part of that help is that amazing CEO that you married. And so you need to start having regular meetings with her so that you know what you are capable of doing and how you can be a real, actual help. And so that is encouraging. The bad news is you're right. This is overwhelming and you're not good at it. The good news is you have Jesus Christ as the ultimate example to you on how to lead, and you have a great CEO. Remember why you married her in the first place, and start working with her, because this is something that will actually build your marriage stronger than it was before. It really will.
Amen. And I think the dad also has to remember the mom is probably feeling the same way, that she is completely unequipped and unable to homeschool.
Well, and this is another encouragement to men. The fact that you have a wife that believes this is important, that homeschooling her children is important. Do you know how many women out there can't even conceive of having children in the first place because they have this goal in their life that doesn't involve family, and that you are a nice tag along, but really what she wants is out there. And you married someone that says, no, my mission is here in this place. The kind of character it takes to believe that and to move forward with homeschooling, you've already made a pretty good choice on what wife you've chosen. And every guy knows what I'm talking about when I say this. Most likely, you weren't even looking for the right things in the first place. Most men have married their wife because they think this woman will make me happy. They are not marrying a woman because they think this woman will help me achieve the mission of growing children into a Christ-like heart and a biblically based mind. They're just looking for anyway. The point is that you've made a good choice. God was gracious to you. So do not blow it now and let her just do all that and you go off and do your own thing. Help build this relationship that you have created through marriage.
Now, what would you say if we have any single moms listening? I mean, this has been a whole conversation on the dads and getting them involved. So I don't want anybody to leave feeling discouraged, saying, well, I don't have that in my home. The dad's not involved, or maybe he is even living there, but just doesn't care. What would you say to that mom?
Yeah, we do have more and more. In America today, we have more and more single moms
In America,
who just don't have any help.
in America,
So I was speaking at a homeschool conference in Denver, Colorado, or is it Colorado? Anyway, you can correct me later. And I was talking about how men need to step up. And it was a really great speech. I beat up the guys, and I was like, man, they were like, it was great. And then this woman came up to me afterwards, and she said, I am a single parent, and I am walking around this conference, and I don't think anyone knows what I'm going through. You say that men need to get involved. That's awesome. How are men going to get involved in my life? And she said it just like that. And I didn't know what to say to her, because I'm always thinking in, the most perfect, situation. The most perfect situation is you have this man, you have this woman, and they love each other and they're trying to work it out with the kids, and that's great. But what do you do when you have women who, for whatever situation they're in, wherever he's abandoned them or whatever it is, she's alone and she needs help? And so, first of all, I think, there's two things I think that need to happen. Number one, she needs to ask from, the church, how the church can be a help to her. Because, we do not use our churches enough. And maybe that's because we're just not involved enough in our churches. And so we feel we can't ask anything of them. But churches need to step up as well and be involved in the lives of especially single moms that are trying to do this very difficult work, trying to both be a single mom and homeschool at the same time. Whether they're able to get subsidies so that they can stay at home, or whether they're working and they come home to have to then do homeschooling, whatever it is twice the work. And so how can churches help? How can there be ways to create a system so that they have help? But number two, I think there needs to be something done, even through homeschool organizations that could also be a help. And here's the thing. I'm not even completely sure all the ways that they would need help, because every situation would be so different. Some might need someone to babysit a few of an infant so that she can actually concentrate with her 10-year-old. I mean, I don't know what it is that they would need, but how do we create a system that they can turn to something? I mean, that's out in the future, but at the very least, there has to be ways that churches can sacrifice time of their members to be a help to these people, because they need help. It is a desperate situation. And I mean, I'm married, and I have, when I have a problem, I still feel kind of alone. And then I tell my wife about it, and we both languish in the pain of it, and then we figure it out. What happens when you have a single mom who has devastating things happening in her life, or even something small that's happening in her life? Who does she come home to talk to? Who does she come home to languish in the pain with? She doesn't have anybody. So everything's alone. Everything is without help. And so if we were aware of that, because this is another thing, most single women are such hard workers, it doesn't occur to them to even ask for help. They might think, well, I don't want to bother anybody because, for whatever reason, I'm in this situation. I don't want to cause more pain for other people to help me. And so we have to have our radar on to say, hey, this young lady or this person is alone. How, does she need help? And we have to approach her saying, knowing that even when we ask her if she needs help, we're going to have to ask several times before she finally says yes.
Yeah, you're right. It's practical help. But even just like an encouraging word. Because obviously, nothing's a surprise to the Lord. So if we have, single moms listening, and they're believers, they have the Lord. Is there like a scripture you could share with them? Is there just some kind of encouragement on that? I mean, they can't fulfill the father role, but like from a biblical standpoint, raising up their kids, in the ways of the Lord, what would it look like for the mom? I think we might get off into like a whole other topic, but I mean, I just even thinking of, a lot of, okay, I know some concerns that moms have is, they're the ones that have to pray with the kids. They're the ones that have to read the Bible to the kids because maybe the dad isn't doing it. The dad isn't stepping up in that way. But for a single mom, like that has to be one of the most important things she's doing is, leading the kids to the Lord. And God the Father is the father figure in the home. Like he's the president. I don't know. So the single mom is seeking the Lord for the vision, for the decisions, for everything she's doing in raising the kids.
Yeah, and And that is a difficult thing because, well, first, okay, let me do it this way. First, let me give encouragement that it's not that, you do all this work and you're trying to make good decisions and you're trying to do all this, work with your children, and that, and after you're done, you lay down at the end of the day and it's dead silence. No one says good job. No one says that, wow, that's pretty amazing. Read Proverbs 31. That's the Lord saying, I'm proud of you. But also, I would say, for your children's sake, be involved in your church. It is hard, especially in some churches. You might feel a stigma. I don't know, but you have to get involved in your church so that you can find men that might take an interest in being a mentor to your children. It is invaluable because there are some men who are grandpas and maybe their kids are gone. Some of those guys have watched their kids walk away from the Lord, and they have learned incredible lessons about that, and they would love to start shaping someone else because they have learned so many lessons of what they did wrong, what they could have done right, and they want to do it right again. And your kids might be that help to them to be able to mentor a child and have a man in their life, because they do need men in their life, and that's what the church is for. And so utilize that. I know I keep going back to the church, but I am convinced that we have not used the church enough.
No, I love that. And I agree. No, absolutely. So one more question. What excites you most about the future of Christian home education and the role of fathers in this movement?
There's two things. Number one, what kind of discouraged me in my teaching, I remember the day I thought, I think I'm done teaching. I was in a college, I was teaching some apologetics class. It's one of those big rooms that had all these kids everywhere. There's probably 100 kids in there. And as I was speaking, I just looked out there and I realized if I just stopped speaking, they wouldn't even know it. They're blank. They don't care. And that wasn't just a moment where I just, maybe they just were concentrating. No, this was an entire semester of just seeing the lack of care in their eyes. What I realized was what we need is a way to reach children before they become callous to the Lord. And so where can that happen? You could try at a Christian school, and I hope they try. But boy, you won't have any better way of reaching kids than through homeschooling. There is no better way to reach their hearts. And I will say this, throughout, whether I'm teaching in a public college or a Christian college, I always knew who my homeschoolers were because they paid attention. They were used to paying attention and being interested in the things of the Lord. So my excitement about homeschooling is that there is a future there of a generation that can rise up and does know the Lord. My excitement about men getting more involved is that it is very easy for young boys, especially, when they are devoid of any male, work in their life, not just a male presence, but male work in their life. They are going to tend towards mimicking attributes of the one that put the most work in their lives, which is usually mom. And so we have young men who's, they're, and yes, you have to have attributes from mom and dad, but when all you have is mom to go by, you have young men that are approaching the world as they learned from mom. And guys, your sons need you, and they need to learn attributes from you so that they can learn to enter into this world in a way that is manly. And God speaks of this. You can see it all through the most manly man of all of Scripture, who is Jesus Christ. And when you see that, we see guys getting more involved in homeschooling, what you see is a future of young men that value being masculine. And I think that's going to make a big change in our nation.
I love that. Absolutely. Definitely. All right. So I know people had to have been so encouraged and blessed by hearing you give just all this wonderful advice on the dad's role in homeschooling. So how can they keep listening to you if they want more information? How can they find you?
Okay, go to rentonrathbun.com. And it's Rathbun, not Rathburn. So don't get that confused. I
Don't
always say
add the R.
Yeah, don't burn the bun, I always say. So rentonrathbun.com, you'll see there my podcast is there, the Renton Rathbun Show, where we deal with worldviews that have been raised up against our families and how we respond to them biblically. And or you can just go straight to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify. We're on pretty much everything that has podcasts. And that's our love letter to parents, to be a help to them. I am completely supported by BGU Press, and so I don't have to ask for money or support, but I would ask for subscribers, because a lot of people watch the show, but they're not subscribing. What's wrong with these people? Anyway, that's all I ask. Subscribe.
All right. So I'll tell everybody to go to subscribe to your show, and then you tell everybody to subscribe to CHEA's podcast. How's that?
That's right. Yes.
All right.
Itching each other's backs. That's what we need to do.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was fun, very informative, and I'm excited for people to hear it. I know they're going to be blessed and encouraged by it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope this conversation with Dr. Rathbun has encouraged and equipped you as you consider the father's vital role in your homeschool journey. Remember, dads, you are called to be more than helpers. You are leaders who serve your families with purpose. Don't miss our upcoming CHEA events. Join us for our Summer Leadership event on August 22nd and Homeschool Freedom Day with Family Protection Ministries on August 23rd. Both events are happening in La Mesa, California, which is in the San Diego area. These events are perfect opportunities to connect with other homeschooling families and leaders. For complete details about these events and all of our resources, visit our website, www.cheaofca.org, and you can also find more information about Dr. Renton Rathbun and links to connect with him in our show notes. I'm Angela Lasch, and on behalf of all of us at CHEA, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Remember, whether you're partnering together as parents or courageously going it alone, you're not just educating your children, you're raising the next generation of Christian parents. Until next time, God bless you and your homeschool journey.
Brought to you by thepodcastupload.com, empowering faith-driven voices.